Welcome to the Story A Day podcast. This is Julie Duffy from storyaday.org, encouraging you to be a writer every day, not someday.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Julie here from the Story A Day podcast. We are reaching the end of the year again, and it's one of those times when I encourage you to look forward to next year, think about what you want to achieve, but also to look back at this year and look at everything you've already achieved. I hope that you've had an amazing writing year where you've written tons of stories, and maybe you competed in NaNoWriMo and you've got a novel length piece, or maybe you just worked on one or two stories, but you really worked on getting them to the best quality they could be. That's awesome. I also hope that you've read lots. I hope that you have even discovered that showing up for your writing is something you're allowed to do. That's the kind of shift that we might take for granted and not see as a triumph, but it absolutely is. I had a chance to talk this week to a room full of entrepreneurs, big virtual room, several hundred people. And it was a little nerve-wracking because I was there, some of the presentations were about how to make your YouTube thumbnail grab people's attention, and how to go from a 6-figure business to a 7-figure business, or what else? There was all, how to write a sales page, all these kinds of presentations. And there were some people there also who were talking about mindset. And I got up and I said to them, "Hi, I work with writers." And when I tell people that, they look at me and they say, "Oh, you help people get their books published." And I have to say to them, it happens, but that's not really what I do. And then they say, "Oh, you teach people how to write better." And I say, "Well, I have some workshops, and if people turn up and do the work, yeah, that happens. But that's not really what I do in totality." And then they get confused and they say, "So you edit?" And I'm like, no, not if I can help it. That's, lots of people can do that. That's not really what I do. And then they look confused, and I tell them what I do. My job is to convince people to allow themselves to do the difficult work of allowing themselves to play with their imaginary friends frequently. And that's what I was there to talk to this room full of entrepreneurs about. These are people who want to build wealth, to create ease in their life, and to make an impact in the world, and they're very motivated and they're working really hard. And my plea to them was to remember that doing the things that make you more fully you, that's the thing that's going to make your contribution to the world unique. And if they give up all of the stuff that makes them uniquely them, if they give up playing the cello, if they give up writing stories, if they give up their watercolor painting just to pursue this other avenue of trying to make an impact in the world, they're really shortchanging themselves and shortchanging their clients. And I know this because of my work with you guys, with you writers. I watch people come in to the Story A Day universe frustrated, tired, disappointed in themselves, feeling guilty, sighing a lot. And after they stick around for a while, everybody starts to look younger and more energetic, and they're smiling more. And yeah, they do start to get published more, and they're completing stories, they're editing them, they're getting the courage and the connections to send them out, and they are getting acceptances, and they're getting readers, and those readers are having their hearts touched and their minds changed, and everything is wonderful. But it starts with simply giving yourself permission to make writing a priority. And that, I think, is the most valuable thing that I do around here, because there is only one you, and you only get one shot at this life, and it's never too late. You can start today. Maybe you can't write a story today, but you can start to think like a writer today. You can start to think of ways that you can squeeze a little time out of your life to make writing a priority. You can start to give yourself permission to ask for that time. Not ask for that time, but communicate to the people around you that you're going to take that time and you're going to make that time for writing. And then you have to tell your inner critic, sit down, shut up, we're going to write now. You're going to sit in your corner. I'm going to write. Doesn't matter if it's good or bad, because I'm showing up. And when you do that, when you show up over and over again, it makes you happier. It makes you more you. It makes you more connected with who you are. That's why I spend so much time on this podcast talking about this kind of stuff, because I can tell you how to write a better scene. I can talk to you about writing characters, those kinds of things I do in workshops and writing prompts. And when we get into the critique group with people, and we talk about those technical things, but none of that happens until you accept that you are allowed to be you. In the past week, we have had the premiere of a film about the life of Jonathan Larson, who wrote the musical Rent and died tragically young, who was an incredibly unique character. He did not have an easy life. He never got to see the premiere of his show on Broadway because he died the day before the premiere. And his life up until then had been a bit of a struggle to get his work, because he was uncompromising to get his work out there. He wasn't willing to write jingles. He wanted to write his stuff. And so life was, it was difficult, but that was what he was willing to do. James Patterson worked in advertising. He worked incredibly hard to learn how to write attractive commercial page turners. He honed his skills in advertising, transferred that to narrative storytelling, and then he found a way to scale up that hasn't been done possibly ever before, but certainly probably not in any serious way by an individual author for quite some time. And then this week, we heard the news that Stephen Sondheim had died. Stephen Sondheim, all of the obituaries talked about how he was a genius, how he was unique, how he was one of a kind. Multiple people said nobody could write a line like, and then they all quoted different lines, because he just had a way of seeing the world and expressing the world that was uniquely his. And yeah, he started when he was young, and he had made some great connections and had some amazing teachers and got himself into places where he could get more opportunities and work with even better mentors. And then he became the guy who everybody was looking to. But here's the thing. He could not keep a show open on Broadway. He wasn't writing Cats or The Phantom of the Opera. His shows did not run for years and years and years. They were slow burns. They were works of art that people came to love, but that closed relatively quickly on Broadway. So although he was celebrated and he was relatively famous, certainly for a lyricist and musical writer, I don't think we've seen anyone more well known than him between Bernstein and Lin-Manuel Miranda. But it wasn't all permission slips for him. He wrote what he wrote the way he wrote it, and not everyone loved it. A lot of people really don't like his stuff. And he had to somehow keep turning up, and he had to find the fortitude to keep doing what he did in the face of commercial flops. I don't know how he did it. And I'm sure there are lots of biographies out there, and there will be more coming out about him, which will delve into that. But it is the first step to getting anything done. A lot of times when people ask me about writing at the beginning of their journey, they come at everything backwards. They ask, where should I send my stories? Or where should I send this story I just wrote? And I say, How many stories have you written? How many people have looked at your story for you? How often are you writing? And it's not what people want to hear. They want to hear, send it to this magazine, they like beginner writers, you'll be good. But even if you're one of those people who writes one story in a flash of inspiration, sends it out to a magazine, it gets published, everything's hunky-dory, that's not the end of the journey. That's sort of an aberration in how things work. Most of writing is sitting alone, wrangling your imaginary friends. And before you can do that, the difficult part is getting to sit alone and then getting your brain to believe you that it's safe to be creative. Because we don't tend to celebrate the unsure thing. The certain thing, absolutely. The dodgy thing, not so much. So as you go back over this year, and I'm going to share my end of year roundup worksheets. I've got a little bundle for you. I'm going to share the link to that in the show notes. And as you go through these at some point over the next month or two, I encourage you to look back over the past year, and you can categorize success and failure and growth and opportunity any way you want. But I'm going to ask you to consider including a category for having the courage to show up. And then think about where you were this time last year in terms of your creative efforts. How have you grown? Because if you've shown up for yourself, even sporadically, but relatively frequently this year, you're going to see a massive difference between your mindset last year and your mindset this year. If you were hoping to be a writer but frustrated last year, it was probably because you needed to change something. And if you're less frustrated now, what was it you changed? Did you change the frequency that you turned up? Did you change your expectations for what happened when you turned up for your writing? Did you join a group? Did you get some writing friends? Note down all of that stuff. Treat them all as triumphs. And then, and only then, think about what you might refine, what you might change in the next couple of months, in the next year. Not so much what you want to achieve. You could do that if you like. If you're product oriented and you're like, I've got to finish my novel this year, and that's a non-negotiable, fine. But also think about the incremental steps you need to take. What work are you going to do on your mindset? What would put you in a place where you would have more support? Who can you ask for help? All of this stuff will be great. Apologize for the background noise in this podcast, but I had to record it in my car. So hopefully some of that's been helpful, because I'm making time for this podcast while I'm waiting outside a grocery store. Because sometimes that's how life is. We don't always get to do our creative work in the perfect environment. And I am certainly not in the perfect environment right now, but I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to edit out some of this background noise, and that this will be, the audio quality will be enough for me still to inspire you to compare where you were this time last year and find the places where you've progressed. Find the places where there was friction or frustration, and see, did you get over that or did it take root? And if it took root, grab your big mental pickaxe and dig away at that root and find a way to make a change. As I say, maybe it's joining a group, maybe it's committing to writing in a different place. I don't know where you are in your journey, so I can't give you the answer right here. I can't give everyone who's listening the answer right here. But if you have a question, and as you're going through this and you're looking at your list of stuff that you either achieved or didn't achieve, or where you were, and if you have no idea how to judge that or how to make a plan for next year, drop me an email, julie@storyaday.org, and put podcast in the title, podcast question, and then just share with me what you've come up with and what you're struggling with, and whether or not I can share that, a version of that on the podcast in future. And then I will answer your question on air. And you can help other people, because if you're having an issue, there's certainly somebody else out there who's struggling with the same thing. It's one of the best things about the Story a Day Superstars group is that occasionally somebody will come in, people will come in with triumphs, and that's lovely. Hey, I finished the story. Hey, my story got published, and this is all wonderful. What happens that's probably the most fruitful, though, is when somebody comes in and says, listen, here's what's going on. And they tell us where they're stuck. And then we get to pile in and say, okay, when I was going through this is what I tried. So, and then sometimes other people chime in and they go, oh my goodness, I'm so glad you asked. I'm so glad you confessed to that, because I'm stuck in the same place and I just didn't even think to ask for help. So then they get the benefit of everybody chiming in. So if you have a question, if you're stuck anywhere in your process, if you're going through your end of year review and trying to make some goals or trying to see some places for improvement next year, and you just don't even know where to start, email me and share as much as, as little as I need to help, as much as you need to share. And I will answer your question. I'd love to hear from you. Have a great writing week and just keep writing. If you want to learn to write, don't read another book or article. Start writing. I'm here to invite you to consider the Story a Day 3-day challenge. It's a challenge and a workshop that gets people writing and completing stories in just 3 days. And it works. I'm fanatical about getting more and more diverse stories into the world, and I think yours should be among them. If you're feeling the pull to write or level up your storytelling, let me hold your hand through 3 days of short story writing. Check out the 3-day challenge at storyaday.org/3DC. Thanks for listening. Why not come over to the blog at storyaday.org and check out this week's writing prompts and articles. And in the meantime, have a great creative week and, of course, keep writing.